Hey, this is Mr. A, and I want to talk about naming binary compounds. Now, for some of you, you actually did a project where you created a flowchart. Some of you didn't. Whether you did or you did not, I want to provide the solution to this problem of naming binary compounds. Now, I didn't say binary ionic compounds because one of the types of the binary compounds that we have are the compounds that are bound covalently. Those are the type 3, remember? So we've got type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. And in order to figure out which type it is, we had to ask ourselves some questions. And the answers to those questions led us to which type. Now, the order that you ask those questions is really important because if you don't get them in the right order, you're not always going to get the right solution. So let me give you the right solution. This is a typical flow chart where we start and then we ask ourselves some questions, and based on the answers to those questions, we're going to take different paths. All paths are going to end in a type, so we know what type it is, but that doesn't necessarily help us. Knowing what type it is doesn't necessarily help us if we don't know how to name it. But if you know how to name it based on the type, then you can actually name it, right? So if we know it is a type 1, for example, then type 1s are easy, right? We just write the name of the cation and then add IDE to the anion, all right? Similarly, if it's a type 3, we use prefixes. So this whole flowchart, this whole scheme has to end in something that's really helpful to us when we're asked to name a chemical formula. So again, we're starting with a chemical formula, say something like lithium oxide. We're given a formula and we want to write the name. Now, I just said lithium oxide, right? But sometimes you don't know what to say, you're just given a formula. Let's walk through this flowchart and see what questions that we have to ask. The first question that we have to ask is, does it have more than 2 elements in the formula? Because if it does, it's not binary. It's not binary, and we have to kick it out automatically. So more than 2 elements, that's our question. If yes, then we know it's polyatomic. Poly means many, right? And then when we go to name it, we have to get a list of polyatomic ions and use the names of those, okay? So if yes, it goes in this direction. If no, then it goes in this direction. The next thing we need to know is, does it have a metal in it? If it does not have a metal in it, then we're talking about 2 nonmetals, and so those 2 nonmetals have to be bond covalently, and we have a special set of rules for naming covalently bound molecules, and that's when we use the prefixes like mono, di, tri, tetra, so on and so forth. So once you know that it's a type 3, then you know to use prefixes. Now that if it's ionic, it has a metal in it, there's 2 kinds. There's the kinds that are regular, then there's the kinds that are special. If it's special, it's not coming from groups 1, 2, or 13. So that's our next question. If it comes from 1, 2, or 13, if yes, then it is a type 1, and that's the simplest type to name. If it does not come from 1, 2, or 13, it's probably a transition metal, and it's one of those that's going to have more than 1 oxidation number, so it's type 2, and you have to use Roman numerals in order to name that. All right, so let's do some examples. The one that I mentioned at the beginning, lithium oxide. So in my flowchart, I actually left room so that you could write the chemical formula in the start box, and now we're going to take it over to here. So flow is this way, right? And the first question is there more than 2 elements? No, I got lithium and oxygen, so that's binary. So If there are not more than two, then we go down to the second question, which is, does it have a metal? And yes, lithium is a metal. So then we come all the way down to the third question, is does the metal come from groups 1, 2, or 13? Yes, in fact it does, and so it's a type 1. It's the easiest type to name. So we say, we just write the name of the cation, so I guess I need a place to do this, right? Write the name of the cation, L-I-T-H, and then add IDE to the anion. So lithium oxide is the name of that one. Let's try another one. CuP. Now that's not cup, that is copper and phosphorus. So the first question is, does it have more than two elements? No. Does it have a metal? Yes, copper is a metal. Does the metal come from groups 1, 2, or 13? If you looked it up on the periodic table, you would see that copper is a transition metal. So it is a type 2, and we're going to use Roman numerals, all right? So, all right, we got to do a little figuring here because you're going to go off into the dark corner of your paper and you say, okay, copper, we don't know what the oxidation number of is that. Phosphorus, we do know what the oxidation number is of that. So you got it, because it's a non-metal, we got to look it up on the chart, and we say phosphorus P is a -3. Now, there is only one phosphorus, there is only one copper, so in order for the oxidation numbers to balance, this side has to be a +3. That's what's going to be up here, so it's copper 3 phosphide. Okay? Got to have your Roman numeral for type 2. Okay? All right, and let's do another one. Wow, that's a lot of elements. Is there more than two? Definitely. Yes, it's a type 4. Many elements, poly means many, it's polyatomic. So in order to name that, we're going to look up and see if we can find combinations here. And I recognize, I could actually put some parentheses here, and I recognize that as ammonium, and this is nitrate, ammonium nitrate. Oh gosh, that is the chemical formula for fertilizer. Did you know that? Ammonium nitrate, right? So that's an example of a type 4, and I think we got one more to go. SiO2. Is there more than two elements? No. Does it have a metal? Silicon, oxygen, both nonmetals. Type 3, we have to use prefixes. So Si, that's a Si, not a 1. SiO2, so silicon dioxide, correct? Which happens to be sand. Most of the earth is made of stuff like this. Okay? So I've showed you how to do the flow chart. I've showed you that the questions are important and the order of the questions are really important, and it's not good enough just to know what the type is, but you have to know what to do with each type to how to name it. Okay?